Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Jake Zadskin, and I'll be your facilitator this morning, as well as moderating our chat panel for any questions you have during the webinar. I'm joined by my colleague, Joe Goodwin, who will be walking us through our material. We're excited to be here today to present an introduction to log analysis. Let's get started. Joe, what do you have for us today?
Good morning, Jake, and good morning, everybody. So in the next hour, we'll introduce and define log analysis and explain why it's crucial to enterprise cybersecurity. We'll list ways in which queries are used, explain logs when should be analyzed, describe best log analysis or log analysis best practices, examine a couple case studies on how log queries are used to analyze IOCs. We'll be viewing a demo of log analysis and then share some resources to support you and your organizations. So ultimately, our terminal objective today is analyzing log events to find indicators of compromise that are used to identify a potential compromise. What does that look like? The enabling objectives to this are defining what log analysis is, why it's important, why logs should be analyzed, and then how to perform log analysis to identify an incident, and exploring a log analysis and identifying an incident through a case study. So before we get specifically into log analysis, as a baseline to cyber awareness, it's critical to understand organizational readiness. You can't effectively respond to something if you don't know the status of your environment and you don't have a plan. Digital infrastructure is inherently interdependent and complex. Incident responders use numerous methods to identify a threat or a potential compromise. Sometimes there are clear signs that something may be arise, such as phishing emails, access issues, unusual network performance, and unusual activities such as unexplained file or folder changes, or even configuration changes. These activities are easier to identify because they are known methods or symptoms of an attack, and there's often awareness training and general knowledge around these common indicators. However, most cyber threat activity does not result in these obvious impacts. Cyber threat actors do not want to be detected. They want to access a system to perform reconnaissance and execute their objectives without being discovered. The goal of cybersecurity is to create layered network defense and reduce open vulnerabilities to keep out unauthorized users and activity. So if we know that threat actors could already be in a given system, how can incident responders identify a potential intrusion to find threat actors are in the system and then figure out what they are doing or what they did? Sophisticated threat actors likely will not leave obvious clues behind. We know that incident responders can collect and use indicators of compromise to analyze potential threat activity. Network defenders and incident responders must set up logging and tracking for their systems to effectively identify unusual activity, to triage issues, and filter out non-incidents. So a quick review of indicators of compromise. An IOC is what you use for incident analysis. It's a clue or a forensic artifact that can be used to indicate an intrusion or compromise of a host in a network. In other words, it's a clue that something went wrong and needs to be investigated. An IOC can reveal TTPs of the attacker, the severity of the compromise, where a mitigation should be applied, and which adversary is attempting the compromise. In general, incidents, according to NIST, there are occurrences that actually or potentially jeopardize the confidentiality, integrity, or availability of an information system or the information the system processes, stores, or transmits, or that constitutes a violation or an imminent threat of violation of the security policies, security procedures, and the acceptable use policies. According to NIST, an analysis is the examination of acquired data for its significance and probative value to the case. A data breach is the authorized a data breach is the unauthorized movement or disclosure of sensitive information to a party, usually outside the organization, that is not authorized to have or see the information. Disclosure of information is data divulged without authorization. Looking at confidentiality, integrity, and availability, again, confidentiality is preserving authorized restrictions on information access and disclosure, including the means for protecting personal privacy and proprietary information. Integrity is guarding against improper information modification or destruction and includes ensuring information non-repudiation and authenticity. And then availability is ensuring the timely and reliable access to and the use of that information. Look at this table quickly. We want to differentiate between an event and an incident. Events occur constantly. These are categorized as anything that happens on a network. An incident is a suspicious event with unwanted activity. So if we look across the categories of access, disclosure, collection, and disposal, we see what authorized events would be for each. For access, it would be simply authorized logging into a system using your own authorized password. But unauthorized would be that external agent gaining access to the network through some sort of compromised permissions. Disclosure, authorized disclosure is simply sharing internal information with other authorized members, whereas an incident might be granting privileges to individuals that do not require that higher level of access. From a collection standpoint, an authorized event would be a network team conducting a vulnerability scan to measure the preparedness of the organization, their security posture. But an unauthorized incident would be that agent collecting information, an external agent collecting information on the system. And then disposal is standard authorized methods to remove logs after older logs have been collected and archived, for example, as opposed to an authorized disposal would be that deletion of those logs without consent. Again, just providing that differentiation between what are considered events and incidents, two terms we hear a lot.
Great. So, Joe, what is log analysis?
So here's a simplistic definition of a log analysis. And this defines log analysis as studying log entries to identify events of interest or suppress log entries for insignificant events. An incident is any unacceptable act, policy, or law violation involving information assets, as we had just seen. There are many types of logs that provide valuable supporting information relevant to an incident. So a few types of logs. There are various logs can be normalized for easier viewing using a security incident and event manager, a centralized system that collects and normalizes the logs and can be queried to locate supporting information that identifies indicators of compromise. All events captured in the SIEM can be used to conduct log analysis to find incidents, which is why continuous log analysis can help in detecting suspicious events very promptly. The logs derive from various areas of an organization. Think of the various types of logs as events that occur at different layers, kind of like an onion. The intrusion and firewall logs can come from the network perimeter, while the application, the system, and security logs may derive from a specific system or a server. Correlating the various logs during the analysis will help build a picture of the activities occurring on the network. The cost of conducting log analysis is time versus money when it comes to choosing free versus paid methods. Although open source tools are available, the savings you get will be spent in configuring, learning, and maintaining a log solution, while paid versions will provide all this, plus some automation and some support. So pause here and just poll the audience. Who among you has had experience investigating logs in your organization? So look and see a lot of, right out of the gate, we have a lot of folks who've had direct experience investigating logs. It's great. It's good. It looks like we've had most people chime in who are going to. So wow, over 3/4 of folks have experience investigating logs, which is great. Excellent. So looking at importance and context of log analysis, there's several reasons why log analysis is important. One of the main reasons emphasized is to provide supporting information of unwanted activity so that the organization can make informed decisions to improve security posture. Continuous log analysis supports one of the concepts of the zero trust security model. The idea of the zero trust model is to understand how data flows, and the fourth step in the zero trust model is to continuously monitor the organization leveraging log analysis to identify anomalous or malicious behavior. On August 27th of this year, in regards to the SolarWinds incident, the Executive Office of the President, OMB, released a memo for improving investigative capabilities related to incidents, emphasizing the importance of logs, stating information from logs is invaluable in the detection, investigation, and remediation of cyber threats. So different organizations set standards on how often to conduct log analysis, as well as how long logs should be retained. The amount of time a financial organization is required to maintain logs differs from that of, say, a medical facility based on the regulations that govern them. Here are a few best practices for each. Violations of the regulatory imposed standards for log retention can result in monetary or credibility losses, where organizations may be fined or lose members due to lack of trust. The lack of conducting log analysis will eventually contribute to an organization's failure. Continuous log analysis can identify misconfigurations caused by accident, which again, not all incidents are purposeful or malicious. And that continuous log analysis can potentially save some time and money. One of the results from the March 2013 Sony hack, where the attackers were able to take control of the entertainment's network, was reported that Sony could have detected the breach earlier if they had compared the events to their known baseline, preferably deploying a SIEM. This could have been conducted using, yes, you guessed it, log analysis, saving the organization potentially over $35 million in IT repairs. So the basic methodology of log analysis begins with querying the logs. This can be easily accomplished using a SIEM. Once an incident is found amongst the events queried, proper steps should be taken to isolate the incident. The incident should be reported to the organization's security team and leadership so that an informed decision is made. The decision may include creating a signature that alerts and blocks using an IPS, a firewall, or a proxy to prevent further compromise. This slide provides some other best practices on how logs can be maintained, stored, and shared. The organization determines the log rotation based on the requirements set by policy. Log rotation, or log rollover, is the concept of how often logs are maintained, archived, and deleted. These findings of the log analysis would be submitted in a report and archived once completed. This archived report would contain a description of the incident and how log queries can provide supporting artifacts. A SIEM can be used for log analysis as it normalizes the various events and can group duplicates. There are various applications, both commercial and open source, that are available. Tools and techniques used to analyze logs. For more granular details of traffic log analysis, a NetFlow tool can be used to view bandwidth usage, the number of packets received or sent from the organization. The findings should be reported from the log analysis, followed by decisions that can be made based on the analysis. For systems that have been compromised, local logs, application security, and system logs can be analyzed for forensic analysis of an individual system. Alerts that can be configured to alarm the organization of future similar unwanted activity. These are done to detect and prevent future compromise. Signatures based on the findings can be added to the organization's IPS, IDS, or their firewalls. The analysis is not complete unless all the steps, the findings, and actions taken are documented and archived as lessons learned. These archived documents can be used to train new analysts and as a reference for organization of incidents found.
Great, thanks, Joe. So now we will take a look at 2 case studies that highlight types of cybersecurity incidents.
So first, the traditional model of hacking a bank isn't so different from the old-fashioned method of robbing one. Thieves get in, get the goods, and get out. But one enterprising group of hackers targeting a Brazilian bank seems to have taken a more comprehensive and devious approach. Rather than picking off online bank customers one by one, ambitious hackers took control of a Brazilian bank's entire DNS infrastructure to rob the bank blind. The attack occurred in October of 2016 and lasted approximately 5 hours, during which the attackers captured the transaction of hundreds of thousands of possibly millions of bank customers worldwide. So imagine if one employee is phished and the attackers had access to the DNS tables, that would be very bad. If DNS was under control of the criminals, then you're done. Unique about this approach is that the hijacking is performed without any interaction from the user. The phishing campaigns with crafted URLs and malvertising campaigns attempting to change the DNS configuration from within the user's browser have been reported as early as 2014, and then throughout 2015 and 2016 when the attack occurred. So the attack is insidious in the sense that the user is completely unaware of the change. The hijacking works without crafting or changing URLs in the user's browser. A user can use any browser and his or her regular shortcuts. The user can type in the URL manually or even use it from a mobile device such as a smartphone or a tablet. The user will be sent to the malicious website instead to their requested website, and the hijacking effectively works at the gateway level. So the hackers changed the DNS, the domain name system registrations of all 36 of the bank's online properties, commandeering the bank's desktop and mobile website domains to take users to phishing sites. In practice, that meant the hackers could steal login credentials at sites hosted at the bank's legitimate web addresses. Researchers believe that the hackers may have even simultaneously redirected all transactions at ATMs or point-of-sale systems to their own servers, collecting credit card details of anyone who used a card. The DNS serves as a crucial protocol running under the hood of the Internet. So this is translate domain names and alphanumeric characters that represent those actual locations of the computers hosting the websites. But attacking those records can take down sites or worse, redirect them to a destination of the hacker's choosing. Ultimately, the hijack was so complete that the bank wasn't even able to send email. They couldn't even communicate with customers to send them an alert. Anyone that was visiting the bank's websites were directed to lookalike sites. And those sites even had valid HTTPS certificates issued in the name of the bank so that visitors' browsers would show a green lock and the bank's name, just as they would with the real sites. Researchers found that the certificates, as they investigated and analyzed, the certificates had been issued 6 months earlier by a company which was a nonprofit certificate authority that's made obtaining HTTPS certificates easier in the hopes of increasing the adoption of HTTPS. After around 5 hours, the bank finally regained control of its domains and convincing it to correct its DNS registrations. The malware had 8 separate modules, again, all discovered under analysis of incident analysis and logs. covering abilities like credential stealing for Microsoft Exchange, Thunderbird, and the local address book. The software was a legitimate rootkit removal tool that had been modified to shut down security software on any computer that downloaded it. The modules discovered were reportedly communicating with a command and control server in Canada. Users who want to stay safe against any IoT botnet that targets routers to modify DNS settings have a few options at their disposal, using complex router admin passwords, keeping their routers up to date, or using custom DNS settings on their devices, which can prevent the device operating system from requesting possibly tainted DNS settings from the local router. So our next scenario focuses on a high-profile attack that occurred in August of 2013, impacting the websites of Twitter and the New York Times. However, those businesses were not the direct target of the attack. The direct victim was the company that held the domain name registrations for both websites. The group claiming responsibility for the attack is known as the Syrian Electronic Army, which has claimed to be behind multiple high-profile cyber attacks over recent years. The group is a hacker collective that allegedly supports Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. For several hours, users attempting to view and post screenshots on Twitter instead receive error messages that read that you've been hacked by the SEA and an image of the group's logo of an eagle and the version of the Syrian flag. New York Times homepage showed the same message. SEA claimed on Twitter that it had taken control of numerous Twitter domains and Huffington Post. Most of those claims were later debunked by researchers and investigators. So this hack was just latest in a major media organization, with the Financial Times and the Washington Post also having been compromised by the SEA in the preceding weeks and months. It was also the second time in a month that the website of the New York Times was unavailable for several hours. These attacks required significantly more skill than the earlier string of SEA attacks on media organizations. It was when the group attacked Twitter accounts for dozens of outlets, including the AP. So how was the attack identified? The New York Times, the Cloudflare, and OpenDNS and Google had noticed issues, and they had done some investigating. Again, incident analysis, log analysis. Then tracked the problem back to an Australian company. Mitigation involved the service disruption announcements from both New York Times and Twitter, which were shared with all their users to give them a heads up as to generally what was going on. Eventually, the DNS company changed all login credentials, and the affected DNS records were returned to their previous values. Affected DNS records were also locked to prevent future changes. So that we're going to pause, and we're going to view a short demo on log analysis.
Hello, my name is Ricardo Davidson Sr. I have 21 years in information technology with 7 years cybersecurity, having worked in the SOC for 4 years with a specialization in digital forensics and incident response. I will conduct a high-level demonstration of tool usage in performing syslog analysis. I will cover 4 different tools that analysts can use to begin analyzing logs. Tools will consist of a SIEM solution, Wireshark, firewall logs from OpenSense, and event viewer contained in host systems to determine possible anomalous behavior occurring in the enterprise and on host systems. First, I want to reiterate the importance of performing syslog analysis, conversely called network forensics. Cybersecurity logs will provide a wealth of information that allows an analyst to identify IP addresses, affected hosts, and connections that were maintained when an anomaly occurred that sparked the alert. An anomaly consists of anything that's outside normal network traffic activity. This could be adding a user outside of designated hours or suspicious traffic connections to a host within your environment. So with that being stated, let's log into our Windows 10 virtual machine where I have access to SIEM solution and Wireshark. Then we'll use Chrome to log into Security Onion which is our SIEM solution. Okay, I've logged into a Windows 10 where I have the necessary tools already installed. Launching Chrome, I can now log into our SIEM solution. Now we've logged into Security Onion, our SIEM solution. And as you can see, you have an overview tab, but if you hit these pancakes, you'll see the other functionality that you have in this SIEM solution. You see an overview, alerts, hunt, PCAP, etc. for monitoring purposes. Most SIEMs will have this functionality. I'll operate from the scenario that alerts were generated indicating suspicious behavior is occurring in the enterprise. So I'll scroll to the Alerts tab, and you can receive an alert via email or if you're monitoring your SIEM. So you can just scroll to your Alerts tab here, and you see the following alerts occurred. All right, these particular alerts were generated over a 2-week period, but you could scale them from weeks to seconds to minutes to hours, days, etc., all the way to months. Now, considering this is a small environment, a lot of the alerts were low. Alerts are usually classified as high, medium, and low, with high needing immediate attention. Now, I've escalated some alerts for this demonstration. Selecting options and selecting escalate, you'll see medium alert that should raise an analyst's curiosity. Escalate. Now I want to refresh. And this is the immediate alert that I'm talking about. So again, there are low alerts, but the medium hit draws my curiosity to investigate further. The alert lists a new user was added. This could be a legitimate alert. If this new user was added after normal working hours and had elevated privileges, meaning they elevated them to a administrative access, this could be indicative of a compromised system. If that's the case, an extreme amount of damage could occur in your environment. Analysts would need to perform deeper analysis for this particular alert. Another feature contained in the SIEM is the packet capture function, where you can obtain a PCAP file. Packets are a small segment of a larger message. Data sent over the internet are divided into packets. These packets are then recombined by the receiving computer or device. Packet capture is intercepting that data for analysis purposes. Packets traversing through your network will provide crucial information in identifying what systems are communicating with each other or remote hosts. Clear indicator of compromise if remote host is deemed malicious. So let's power on Wireshark and review a PCAP file that I've captured earlier and observe what information an analyst can gather from that instance. I'm going to open up a previously captured PCAP file. Important items to view in Wireshark are your timestamp, which indicates the time that this traffic was being transmitted, your source, which is the source IP address and the destination IP address. And you also want to look at the TCP. That's the protocol, Transmission Control Protocol. So you can see that TCP was a protocol used between the source 192.168.200.135 to the destination 192.168.200.21. The analyst would need to perform more in-depth analysis to determine what is occurring. Is this destination host identified as malicious? Is this a command and control host that is delivering commands to gain more access to pivot through the environment? These are but a few questions that should be raised when using these tools. And I'll do a quick deep dive into what I mean by the data that's being transmitted in this PCAP file. So I'll just go down here, follow, and do a TCP stream. And it's sending basically hello packets. This is very generic stuff. But that data could be real lengthy because it contains whatever data you're transmitting into it. But for instructional purposes, it's just transmitting hello. Okay, so I also want to review the firewall logs to determine what was blocked and are permitted into our environment. And I'm going to move over to the rules where I set rules to block certain ports. So as you can see, I've got port 22, which is SSH or secure shell, and port 1433 and 1434. Port 22, threat actors can use to do brute force attacks and gain access to your system and start exfiltrating data back to them or transferring data to your system. So we want to block that. Now keep in mind there's 65,535 ports that devices use to communicate with each other. And I'm just identifying two that are known to have some reported malicious activity that have occurred. Port 1433 are the default ports for SQL Server and MySQL. And they're often used for malicious distribution of different payloads to the system or whatever the threat actor has in mind to get on your SQL server. So I'm going to make sure that these rules are in fact in place. So I'll go here to my log files, do a live view. And as you see, it's already something that's coming over that was blocked. But I want to ensure that port 22 is blocked. And yes, it is blocked. So the rule is being enforced. Okay, let's give a little bit here. I'm going to test out port 1433. And again, both ports are successfully blocked. It also gives you the source destination, the source, where that communication was coming from, and who it was trying to communicate with, which is, in this case, it's coming from 10.10.10.100 going to 10.10.10.5. Now, should an analyst see that these ports wasn't blocked, he definitely wants to find out the systems that were affected and then go and log into those systems and see exactly what was occurring, what was happening at the time these two IP addresses were communicating with each other. So once the system has been identified, now we can move over to the event viewer that's on your host system. As you can see, the event viewer has is where you can find your logs. If you go to your Windows logs, it will show you different logs you can look at. You can look at your application log. You can look at your security logs, your setup, your system, and forwarded events. These logs, if you look at them real generically, click on application and tell you what's happening in your application. But there's one thing I want to point out, that when you, in your event logs, there's event IDs. And some IDs will indicate malicious intent or malicious access to your system. So what I want to do is find out if event ID 4672 has accessed my system. And what that is, that's someone logging onto your system that has administrative equivalent access. So I will go down here to security, right click, do a find. And as you can see here, this in fact did have some activity that occurred. And it occurred 9/9/2021 at 2:29 p.m. So in this instance, the analyst would need to dive further and see if this was in fact a legit log on, or if in fact it had malicious intent. Someone maybe escalated privileges or something of that nature. But this is where analysts do a deeper dive into their analysis of syslogs and what has actually occurred on that machine. I performed different scenarios for log analysis with separate tools. I identified the security onion, the use of alerts to find added users at inappropriate times. I've also used Wireshark to identify two machines talking to each other, establishing a three-way handshake as we discussed earlier. And I've also used firewall log alerts to go in and start looking at what was actually blocked and what was not blocked, and see if there was malicious intent involved in that. And finally, I looked at the event viewer to determine if there was administrative logon, which in fact there was. So that's something I would need to look at further to find out if in fact it was legitimate or not, like I said earlier. So this is a very brief, high-level overview of syslog analysis / network forensics and tools that can be used to perform this endeavor. Most SIEMs offer this functionality, but multiple tools are used to deep dive into what is occurring in your environment. That concludes this demonstration. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Ricardo. Very informative. This concludes the case study portion of the webinar and the demo. So we'll finish up today by walking through a knowledge check, reviewing some of the core concepts and takeaways from this course. We'll cover 10 questions. When a question is read, make a note of your answer, and after a few moments, we'll reveal the correct answer. Follow along and see how you do. Let's get started. Notable goals of cybersecurity include keeping out unauthorized users, creating a layered network defense, reducing open vulnerabilities, or all of the above.
Okay, so it looks like everybody's jumping in on all the above. That's great. We aren't tricking too many people there with the first one out of the gate. That is correct. All of those things are the notable goals of cyber. Next question.
True or false? Incidents occur constantly. An event is a suspicious event with unwanted activity.
A lot of folks jumping on false right away. We have a few folks going with that this is true. Again, this is something we covered early on, and as a hint, we went over the table that talked about some of these things. So it looks like we have most people chiming in who will, and it's false. The events occur constantly, and the incident is that suspicious event with unwanted activity. Okay, next question.
Which is not a benefit of incident analysis as part of an organization's cyber preparedness posture? Returning to normal operations, elimination of future attacks, improving defenses, or understanding your network?
Okay, we've got A and B. A couple folks with D. And we have a almost peaking out here on responses. And the answer is B. That's a strong statement in saying elimination of future attacks, which is not necessarily a benefit because it does not eliminate future attacks. Sort of walking a fine line there. Next question.
So which of these are clues that could prompt you to investigate log activity? indicators of compromise, breadcrumbs, low-card artifacts, or failed login.
Okay, looks like we have a little bit of a competition between A and D. Got some breadcrumbs. And I think we've had most people chime in that will. And we're looking at going with indicators of compromise here. Kind of keyword there was clues. So we're looking at those being the clues that would prompt you to look at log activity. Next slide, please.
With respect to cybersecurity, what does CIA stand for? Confidentiality, information accessibility, compartmentalization, information authorization, controls, information access, or confidentiality, integrity, and availability.
All right. A lot of people going right to D. Pretty smart group here. That was perhaps a layup question, and absolutely right. That is D. Next question.
True or false? Logs are typically not time sequenced.
That was probably the quickest answering I've seen by the group ever. Yes, that is false. Correct. Boy, that was fast. But yes, that's false. Logs are typically time sequenced. Next question.
Types of logs include the following except application, breach, system, intrusion.
Okay, a lot of folks going to breach. We have a couple on application, intrusion. Again, we're going back to that list we had of log types. And that is correct. That breach logs were not included in that list we had of types of logs. All right, next question.
Ideally, logs are analyzed quarterly, daily, continuously, or weekly.
Good. A lot of folks on continuously. Got one on daily. So for here, we are looking for continuously. That's the key word there. That could be interpreted as perhaps some other frequency of time, but it's really meant to be at an absolute constant rate. Great. Next question.
True or false? Logs may be deleted after they pass their attention date.
The vast majority of folks going for true. So when we think about passing that retention date, that is true. That's the key word, is once they do pass that date, it's safe to go ahead and delete those logs. And our last question.
This is used to view logs for potentially nefarious activity. SIEM, logbook, chirp, or a server.
All right, everybody piling on SIEM and not tricking anybody at all on that one. And that is absolutely correct. We've discussed it numerous times throughout the webinar, and that's what we're using. Great. So we'll close out that poll. So as we start to wrap things up for today, let's just go over a few key takeaways from the webinar. Again, let's remember an incident is an occurrence that is actually or potentially jeopardizing the CIA, the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of an information system, or the information the system has in it that it's storing and processing and transmitting, or that constitutes a violation or an imminent threat of violation of those security policies, procedures, and acceptable use policies. Again, this is all about incidents. It's important, incident analysis. It's important to understand that definition. That log is a stream of those time sequence messages that record occurring events. Again, all events, good and bad. We looked at the differentiation between events and then incidents. In that product environment, logs should be analyzed continuously. Realistically, this may not be feasible depending on the organization policies and resources, but again, in an ideal world, we're looking at continuous monitoring. And then just to hammer the point home, and the SIEM being used to identify nefarious activity is a very, very good tool. So in closing, we hope you enjoyed the webinar and come away with some knowledge that helps you better understand incident logs. If you'd like to learn more, we encourage you to visit some of these resources listed below. They include a recent OMB memo M2131 on improving the federal government's investigative and remediation capabilities related to cybersecurity incidents. The resources out of DHS Office of Cybersecurity and Communications on Cyber Incident Data and Analysis Working Group white papers, and list of NIST special publication as they relate to log management. Jake, over to you.
So lastly, we are interested in your feedback. Please complete this questionnaire as it helps with the design of future training and events. Thank you for your participation. Our certificate of completion is available for download. Have a wonderful day.